Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids and Monsters video. Thank you as always for your suggestions. This particular cryptid that I'm about to talk about here has probably been asked for since probably the first couple of videos that I first started on here. The reason why I didn't initially talk about this cryptid was because at the end of the day it's a dog, and I didn't really find that too interesting on there, but I thought to myself today, okay, enough people have been asking for it for so long that maybe there's something to this, and so I decided to do a little bit of research and see if the information was able to captivate me, and actually it did on there. So with this particular cryptid, I'm picking this and I'm showcasing this to everybody because there was a very notable instance on there that is very captivating. It's very fascinating. It's the kind of stuff that I love reading about, where once you start reading about it, you become hooked, and so you want to see what the outcome is. And I'll talk about that particular incident here in a few minutes, and it actually ties in. Also, the reason why I picked this particular cryptid is because it ties into a very recent story just this year that's associated with this cryptid and possible evidence that it has been found on there. So this particular cryptid that I'm talking about is known as the Black Shuck, and it is apparently the granddaddy or the most famous of all the large black dogs out there. Others that have suggested similar cryptids involving black dogs, apparently it's a phenomenon that has happened throughout multiple parts of the world, even here in the US, and there's various other versions of the giant, I guess evil, you could call it, black dog out there, but this particular one again seems to be the biggest one of all. Not just in a literal sense, but in a popularity. When it comes to its popularity, it is by far the most well-known one. I didn't know much about it to begin with, so again, in doing the research on there, I came across some very interesting info. So for those of you as well, you may have heard about this particular cryptid and not known much about it, so this will be a good video to showcase to everybody, so that way we all get to learn about it together. So the Black Shuck is, again, basically a large black dog that has been roaming the earth now for hundreds of years. I mean, we're talking about incidences that have been reported ever since the early 1100s or so. Incidences that apparently even date back to the time of the Vikings on there. That's how far back it goes on there. And then with regards to this particular cryptid, it either has good intentions or it has bad intentions. And with the incident that I'm about to talk in a few minutes, the most famous incident of it all, it absolutely had bad intentions during that particular time period. But there are apparently reports elsewhere that it is completely different, some form of a protector of some sort. So the Black Shuck, again, it's been reported for so long that it's actually part of folklore. You'll find it in various parts of the world, but the most famous locations and instances have to go towards like the England, United Kingdom type area, particularly towards the countryside of a place called East Anglia, and that's where it's said to roam the coastline and come across people in and around that area there for hundreds of years. And it has a very distinctive look. You cannot miss it on there when it comes to this black dog, and that's actually part of the bad deal associated with coming across it, because it is not good news, which I'll talk about here just very quickly. But first, let's go over the descriptions of it. You picture just your average, normal black dog, but the Black Shuck is much larger than that. Probably some have said that it is the size of the largest dog ever. Let's say one of those Great Danes. Others have said it's even larger than that. It's as large as, let's say, a cattle. And then even others have said that it's even larger than that. That the ones that they come across, it's actually as large as a horse itself. It has long black fur, which is its second most distinct feature on there. Dark as night, completely black, It is essentially the type of fur that's rare on dogs, because most dogs tend to have either a fair composition of some sort. So this one essentially stands out 100% on there. The second most common feature, though, has to do with its eyes. People have said that they are large as saucers, and that they have a blood red look to them. So very distinctive set of eyes on there. It also tends to have a growling type of appearance. Those that have come across the Black Shuck and it's in one of its bad moods or bad phases, it tends to have like a growling type of appearance, like you would expect on a dog that's about to attack. And then it's essentially, again, the size. It's the size, the look, the red eyes that make it have like an almost iconic look on here. One of the best descriptions possible is a book that was written in 1901 called Highways and Byways in East Anglia, and it describes the creature with being the most common traits as follows. It says, he takes the form of a huge black dog and prowls along dark lanes and lonesome field footpaths where, although his howling makes the hearer's blood run cold, his footfalls make no sound. That's also a pretty distinct feature associated with the Black Shuck. Even if it's walking or running, you would expect to hear some kind of sound as associated with its paws, but it makes no sound whatsoever. Other than the actual growling and the noises that comes from its mouth, no other part of its body, like the paws or anything else, makes any kind of sound. So as it continues in the book, it says, you may know him at once should you see him by his fiery eye. He has but one, and that, like the Cyclops, is in the middle of its head. That's another unique distinction. Some people have actually said that the Black Shuck in their encounters, instead of seeing two fiery red eyes large as saucers, they've actually come across Black Shucks that have been just like Cyclopses. They have only one single eye, which makes the encounter probably even that much more frightful, because you would expect your average dog to have two eyes, and then here's this thing running towards you and it has one eye altogether. And then the encounter continues. It says, but such an encounter might bring you the worst of luck. It is even said that to meet him is to be warned that your death will occur before the end of the year. So that has to do with the bad luck associated with the Black Shuck that I was talking about earlier. This Black Shuck is apparently an animal of omen of sorts. Anybody that comes across the Black Shuck, it does so on purpose. It meets you on purpose because it's an omen that something bad is going to happen to you within that year. In fact, it could even be that death is coming to you within that time period. And those that have encountered the Black Shuck and live to tell about it are apparently, like let's say afterwards for a long time, where they live after that encounter, are apparently far and few in between. But there's an interesting side note associated with that they'll talk about here in a minute. What's interesting about the encounters with the people is that there are ways apparently to avoid the Black Shuck, and it has to do with the fact that if you hear his distinctive howling, which is again a howling that quote unquote makes the hearer's blood run cold, then once you hear that very distinctive howl, all you have to do is apparently shut your eyes, as that book states. So you will do well to shut your eyes if you hear him howling. Shut them even if you are uncertain whether it is the dog fiend or the voice of the wind you hear. And apparently this does the trick. So if you're walking in and around that area there in East Anglia or anywhere near in the United Kingdom or England, and you happen to hear that very distinctive, cold, shivering type howl that makes you instantly fearful for any type of encounter, and you know that that particular howl is nearby your area, then apparently all you have to do is shut your eyes, shut them as tight as you can, even if this howl is coming closer and closer to you. Shut them and keep them shut until this thing, whatever it is, passes you. I would imagine that in that situation, the closer it gets to you, you would start hearing let's say, the beats of his breath associated with this Black Shuck. And who knows if it even gets even as scary as this. This Black Shuck, even with your eyes closed, it would probably approach you. You could hear it like looking at you, sniffing you, doing like an inspection of you, and you want to open your eyes and you want to run away as quickly as you can. But according to this book, just keep them shut as much as you can, and then once it loses interest in you, then it walks away and it descends away, and you're safe at that point. So apparently that's the trick to the Black Shuck if you ever come across it there in that area. Again, the key thing is, no matter what, keep your eyes shut, even if it's in and around you and it's trying to get you to open the eyes, because the minute you open your eyes and you see the Black Shuck and it sees you, then this doom or bad luck or even death that's associated with the Black Shuck will come across you pretty soon. Now, I was mentioning that there's an interesting revelation associated with the Black Shuck, and it's actually far more in recent times that this has been happening. People have said that actually there's been a turnaround to the Black Shuck. Instead of it being an omen of bad luck or even death, it's actually been considered more of a benign encounter. It's in some cases even a pretty lucky encounter. And what I mean is this: there have been tales associated with the Black Shuck where people have come across it, and in particular women have come across it, and instead of this dog attacking them or doing anything in terms of it harmful, it seems like it's actually protecting the woman, because let's say especially it's at night and the woman is walking home, and they come across this Black Shuck. The Black Shuck doesn't do anything bad to the woman. In fact, it follows the woman, but in the sense that it's a little far away and making sure that it's more of like a protector and ensuring that nothing bad happens to the woman while they find their way home. There have even been reports of the Black Shuck being found by travelers who have become lost. People that who have been trying to get their way home. Maybe they were trying to do so at night. Maybe they were trying to, let's say, just travel throughout the forest, and they get lost. Well, they come across this very large black dog with, again, the very distinctive red eyes, and this dog either forces them to go a certain way, or it encourages them to go a certain way, maybe by doing the usual things that dogs do whenever they want you to come over, like a playful manner or anything like that. And it allows the travelers to eventually find their way home. And apparently these kind acts have become much more common throughout our century, like let's say throughout the 20th century and the 21st century, than anything else before then. So interesting on that part, the idea that the Black Shuck has apparently turned around, and whatever this cryptid is, it has become more of a benefactor of sorts and a protector of sorts for various people out there. Now, all of that being said, the Black Shuck, though, remains infamous for being on the bad side, and one of the most serious, notorious, famous, infamous type incidences that occurred happened in 1577. So wow, almost a good 500 years back. And this happened at the Holy Trinity Church there at a place called Blytheburg, and you'll see a picture of it here. So this is what happened. Again, you have to travel back to 1577, and this is the incident that made the Black Shuck famous for what it is today on there. August 4th, 1577, there was a congregation of sorts happening there at the Holy Trinity Church, and there was at the same time a very large thunderstorm that was happening outside the church. Very powerful thunderstorm, like the likes nobody has ever seen on there. A large electrical outputs of lightning, large sounds of thunder. I mean, it was happening, and probably the people there thought at that time that there's something funny going on there, and it all culminated to this. Apparently, something hit the front of the church so bad, it was either a bolt of lightning or it was some sort of burst of thunderstorm, something like that it hit it so bad that the doors at the front of the church blew open, and coming from the front doors was the Black Shuck, and it created havoc. It was instant death apparently for 2 people there within the church on there, because the dog apparently ran in, and it was, again, the Black Shuck being its distinctive iconic look, large, the size of, let's say, a Great Dane or even a cow, running through the behemoth, the sounds it was making with its howls, the fiery red eyes. It was even apparently leaving scorch marks everywhere its paws were reaching and touching in within the church. But again, the most distinctive thing too is that even with all this, there was no noise in terms of its paws hitting the ground, only from its actual mouth. So it ran in, and as 2 of the churchgoers there, a man and a boy, were kneeling at that time, praying, once it ran in and burst into it immediately grabbed the man and the boy each by the neck and then wrung them so hard that it killed them in an instant on there. And this is coming, and you'll see a picture of it here, straight from an account that was posted in, I guess you could call it the newspaper there at that time, that was describing the incidents on there. This came actually from a reverend who was in that church at that time named Abraham Fleming, and this is what he said. He said, "This black dog, or the devil," I think there's some misspellings on there, but it must have been the time period of how they spell things. He says, "Or the devil in such a leanness, running all along down the body of the church with great swiftness and incredible haste among the people, in a visible form and shape, passed between 2 persons, and as they were kneeling upon their knees and occupied in prayer, it wrung the necks of them both at one instant clean backward, inasmuch as in that moment where they kneeled, they strangely died on there." So whatever this thing was that came into that church on that fateful day, it was not there to do anything good. It killed that man and the boy right then and there. And so powerful, again, were its actions that not only was there instant murder for those 2 people, but the Black Shuck's presence apparently caused the church steeple to collapse straight through the roof and land right there inside the church. And then the Black Shuck apparently started running around, and again there was imagine the scene there, huge chaos, something the size of a cattle, a potential bull, and with the fierce determination of the Black Shuck running around, they had just killed 2 people, and it was destroying things left and right. And then this is one of the most interesting parts. Apparently it came up to that door that you'll see a picture of here, and it either used its claws or used its paws or anything like that to try to push that door open and escape. And once it did so, it left those scorch marks that you'll see there. Those are the scorch marks that are on the right hand side of the door, which could be the only physical evidence we have of the Black Shuck and this encounter right there. People swear on it. They state that the paws from the Black Shuck created those particular scorch marks and nothing else. In fact, this is what was said. And all down the church in mist of fire, the hellish monster flew, and passing onward to the choir, he many people slew. On there is what it was described on there. And in fact, they've called those scorch marks ever since then the devil's fingerprints, because of that fact that of this encounter within a church and the appearance of the Black Shuck and how he looked and acted, that at that point something else was visiting them, and before it left those scorch marks that are there seen to that day. So very, very fascinating stuff on that part. Apparently though, people have said since then, those that have been investigating this particular incident, that most likely the doors bursting open like that may have been from, let's say, an actual it was from that storm actually, but it was something else, like it was a strong burst of wind that caused the doors to come open, and then the spire or that steeple falling down within the church, again having to do with the very strong thunderstorm and the weak foundation and formation associated with this church combining into it, just toppling into it. And probably the Black Shuck at that time, some people have said, is just what it is a black dog that was probably scared and running out of its mind out of this thunderstorm. You know how some dogs get whenever there's a gigantic thunderstorm. I mean, they'll go nuts. And so there might have been a dog there that was apparently going crazy, and when it did so, and when it came in, it violently attacked people around it on there. So again, there's some skeptics that associate this encounter with nothing else than being forces of nature combined with a simple animal, a black dog, going crazy on there. So now, how this all ties in to the current news is that, and this is pretty cool, this is from this year, this is dated May 15th, 2014. I found this article here from the Daily Mail .co.uk. Apparently the remains of the Black Shuck have been found, and you'll see pictures of it here. It has been found, and it's being associated with the Black Shuck because of both A, the location of where it was found, and then B, what was found around it. So apparently some people, I don't know how they came across that skeleton, but they did. It looks like there was a team of archaeologists that were trying to unearth the remains of some pottery in and around that area, and that pottery was dated to about 500 years ago, which again falls into that infamous 1577 year, that incident that occurred in the church. And when they did so, and they were uncovering this pottery, they came across this very large skeleton of a dog. In fact, it's been measured at being 7 foot long. And again, how they tied this to that age is because of the pottery that was tied and found right near where that dog was buried on there. In fact, it was apparently buried at a shallow grave. And where this particular skeleton was found is no less than 2 miles away from the Holy Trinity Church. So that is very, very fascinating. Too many coincidences to be all at once. Here you have a very large dog skeleton over 7 feet tall, which would measure against what the Black Shuck was measured against. And then you have B, the time period being associated with it, with the pottery dating back, being carbon dated to 500 years, again falling in that era when the Black Shuck was around. And then C, where it was buried, was only about 2 miles away from that church, involving its most famous incidents on there. And so when you combine all those three factors, one can't help but think, is this the Black Shuck? I mean, is it really it? And if so, then we might actually have for the first time evidence of an actual cryptid found right then and there. I had talked about one of the a similar incidents, the Wawel dragon. Check it out when you have a chance. This is one of my earlier cryptid videos out there, and I had mentioned that the skeleton of the Wawel dragon is apparently still buried underneath a castle of some sort, and all it takes is somebody being able to take the time and the money to dig and do an archaeological search and find the skeleton, and it could prove that the dragons were really real. But here in this case, skeleton has been found, and everything seems to tie it to being right then and there the Black Shuck in the flesh. This is the same Black Shuck that involved the famous incidents from 1577 with that Holy Trinity Church. So pretty cool stuff. And again, this all was found just this year. So this isn't something that was found, let's say, 20 years ago and dismissed. No, it's still there. People have found it just this year, and it's been carbon dated to that time period. So very, very fascinating stuff on there. So what do you guys think? The Black Shuck, have y'all ever heard of that before? Have y'all ever heard any tales associated with the Black Shuck? Again, one of the most famous examples of the bad black dog, the one that presents omen, evil, potentially even death. It remains the most famous one out there. And this will probably be the only one that I talk about, because again, there are other variations of those bad black dogs out there within the world, but for all intents and purposes, this one kind of sums it up for them all. So if anyone has been to that area, particularly to that church where the infamous attack happened, and anybody has any tales associated with creepiness or anything like that, please post your comments, share them below. More specifically, if anyone has any particular tales of coming across a Black Shuck, or if anybody knows anybody that has on that part, I'll be interested to hear what those stories are about. So please post them below too. So as always, thanks again, everybody. Take care. Bye.